I have cleaned the same building for 19 years. That is not a complaint. I want to be clear about that from the beginning, because people hear janitor and they hear diminishment. They hear the kind of man the galaxy forgets is in the room. I hear it differently. 19 years means I know where every pressure seal runs behind the north corridor wall. It means I know that the second drainage grate in the diplomatic reception area backs up in the third week of every cold season, because the original installation crew beveled the pipe flange 3 degrees off-center, and nobody has ever fixed it. Not once in 19 years. And every cold season I clear it before it becomes someone else's problem. It means I know this building the way a surgeon knows a body. Not the way an architect knows it on paper, but the way someone who has opened every access panel, replaced every failed seal, and walked every corridor at 400 on a Tuesday knows it. Velsorin Consulate Annex 3 on Kesaldivar Corridor Station 9 is not a glamorous posting. It is the support facility for the consulate proper, a 10-minute transit run away on the primary station ring. Annex 3 processes secondary diplomatic correspondence, manages supply requisitions for the consulate's bilateral functions, and handles what the senior staff call overflow placement, meaning that when the main consulate building has something it does not want to look at directly, it sends it to Annex 3. I have been the building maintenance and sanitation contractor here since I was 29 years old. I hold a Class 2 Compact Facility Operator designation, which I earned because the bilateral welfare supplement requires a registered operator designation above Class 1 for any compact facility that handles diplomatic traffic, and the previous contractor did not have one and left, and I got the contract, and I read what I needed, and I filed what I needed, and then I went back to cleaning the building. The placement notification came on a Thursday morning in the second week of the cold season. I was in the service corridor behind the secondary conference room, replacing the ambient ventilation filter housing. It runs about 14 months before the filtration membrane degrades to the point where the atmospheric monitoring array starts flagging it, and I replace it before the flag, because a flag means a maintenance report, and a maintenance report means a meeting, and a meeting means 2 hours of my Thursday that could have been avoided by replacing the filter on schedule. I pulled the notification from the building relay terminal when I came back to the cleaning bay to log the replacement. Facility Operator Kale Das, Compact Maintenance License CA CM 7441 DAS, Notification of Diplomatic Placement, Instrument Reference VSA 3 Place 41 DAS K. Subject Velsorin Consulate Annex 3. Duration 30 Standard Days. Placed Party 1 Velsorin Minor Primary Line Designation Secondary Administrative Branch Placement Authority. Purpose Disciplinary Operational Observation Placement. Place Party to observe and assist with facility operations for the duration of the term. Reporting Monthly Status Report to Secondary Administrative Branch Coordinator Vel Orath Sale. Effective 700 Friday. I read it 3 times. Not because I did not understand it the first time I did, but because I am a thorough person by nature, and I have found that the things you miss in a document are almost always in the third reading, not the first. What I had at first reading, a Velsorin child of primary line designation, meaning a child from the ruling house, not a secondary administrative family, was being sent to spend 30 days in a facility maintenance and sanitation annex as a disciplinary measure. She was being sent to observe and assist with facility operations. The placing authority was not the primary house. It was the secondary administrative branch, which is the part of the Velsorin bilateral structure that handles what the senior diplomatic staff call secondary matters, and what I, having cleaned this building for 19 years, understood to mean the political faction that operates in the shadow of the primary house, and does what the primary house cannot be seen to do directly. What I had at second reading, the instrument was 32 pages long, which is unusual for a placement notification. Standard placements run 6 to 8 pages. I flagged this in the second reading and went back to the beginning. What I had at third reading. On page 27, subsection 14, paragraph 3, there was a clause. The clause stated that the placed party's designation as a diplomatic placement subject would remain in effect for the duration of the 30-day term, provided that a compact registered facility operator of Class 2 or above filed a welfare contact designation with the compact bilateral welfare registry within 72 hours of the placed party's arrival, and maintained that designation in active status for the duration of the placement term. In the event that no such filing was made, or the designation lapsed, the placed party's status would revert automatically to secondary administrative branch administrative custody under the bilateral secondary placement provision. And at that point, the primary house protections attached to her primary line designation would not apply, because her presence at the facility would be classified as a completed disciplinary placement rather than an active one. The clause was designed so that a janitor would not read it. I am a janitor, I read it. I filed the welfare contact designation at 13:47 on Thursday, 17 hours before she arrived, because I have found that the document you file before the problem appears is worth 3 documents filed after. She came through the service entrance at 7:13 on Friday morning. I use the service entrance myself. Main entrance is for diplomatic staff and visitors. Service entrance is where supply deliveries come in, where I start my 600 circuit, where the building's working parts begin. She came through it the way someone comes through a door they have been told to use and are not certain about, carefully, watching the threshold as though it might have conditions attached. She was small. I knew she would be. The welfare supplement's age conversion tables put a Velsorin 9-year-old at roughly equivalent to a compact 8-year-old in developmental terms, and she was at the smaller end of that, but I was still unprepared for how much smaller she was than the transit coat she was wearing. Ash silver skin, the pale kind that catches light rather than absorbing it. Pale amber double iris eyes, the outer ring lighter than the inner, both of them doing a careful inventory of the cleaning bay the moment she stepped through the door. Silver white hair cut close and a little uneven, the way hair looks when someone cut it in a hurry and did not check the back. One cloth bag over one shoulder, worn at the strap, nothing else. She stopped just inside the threshold and looked at me. She did not speak. I said, "You're Velsil." She said carefully, "Yes." I said, "I'm Kale Das. I run the building maintenance contract here. You're going to be helping me for the next 30 days. She waited. Her eyes moved from me to the cleaning bay and back. I recognized the movement. It was the look of someone doing an assessment, not someone frightened. The look of a person deciding whether a space is what it says it is. I put a grain paste packet on the work table. Not in front of her, at the middle of the table, equidistant. The way you put something down when you want it to be a choice rather than an obligation. She looked at it, then she looked at me, then she sat down at the table and took the grain paste and ate it. I went back to logging Thursday's ventilation filter replacement, because the log waits for no one, and the log is always the correct next step. The building runs on a circuit. I explained this to her over the first 2 days. Not because she asked, she did not ask much at first, she watched, but because I believe that if you are going to show someone how something works, you show them all of it, not just the parts that are convenient. The circuit runs approximately 4 hours for a standard maintenance pass. North corridor, east wing, secondary conference rooms, diplomatic reception area, supply processing bay, service corridors, cleaning bay, then the relay terminal for logging. Every deviation from the standard pass gets a notation in the building log with a timestamp and a description. I have 19 years of building logs. They go back to the second month of my contract, when I realized that the previous contractor had never kept a log at all, and the building had been flying blind since its commissioning. She walked the circuit with me on the first day and did not speak. On the second day, she began asking questions. They were precise questions, not the questions of someone making conversation, the questions of someone who wanted to know how the system worked and was ordering the information in her head as she gathered it. Why does the East Wing atmospheric sensor read .3 above baseline? Because the East Wing's external seal on the service corridor access panel has a slow degradation on the lower gasket. I replace it every 8 months. It's due in about 6 weeks. Why haven't you flagged it as an active maintenance item? Because at .3 above baseline it's within tolerance. When it hits .5, it goes on the active list. At .7, I replace it immediately. It's been at .3 for 11 days. I'll flag it at day 14 if it hasn't moved. She was quiet for a moment. Then, the diplomatic reception area's second drainage grate. Every cold season, 3rd week, the pipe flange is beveled 3 degrees off from spec. Have you documented it? 23 times. She looked at me, and no one has fixed it. No one has fixed it. She thought about this. I could see her thinking about it, not the frustration of it, but the logic of it, the system of it, the way a structure that is supposed to work correctly can run for 19 years with a known defect, because nobody with the authority to fix it has the daily proximity to care. She said, you fix it yourself every cold season. It takes about 40 minutes. It's not a permanent repair. I don't have the access authority to replace the flange, but it clears the drainage until spring. That is not your responsibility. No, I said, but it's my building. She did not say anything to that. But she wrote something in the small notebook she had started carrying on the second day. A narrow gray notebook she pulled from the cloth bag each time she wanted to record something, which was more often than I expected. By the end of the first week, she was doing half the East Wing circuit herself. Not because I assigned it to her, because on day 4 she asked if she could do the atmospheric sensor readings in the East Wing independently, and I said yes, and she did them correctly, and she wrote the readings in the building log alongside mine in small, precise, compact standard script, and the next morning she did them again before I reached the East Wing, which meant I could spend that time on the service corridor seals, which were due for their quarterly inspection. By day 6, she had identified a routing inefficiency in the standard circuit. The way I had always walked it, North Corridor first, then East Wing, then conference rooms, meant that I doubled back through the East Wing to reach the supply processing bay. She drew a revised route in the notebook, showed it to me at the end of the day. Her revised route eliminated the doubling back. It cut the standard circuit by approximately 20 minutes. I looked at it for a moment, then I said, "That's correct." She said, "It will save time." "It will, I'll implement it tomorrow." She looked at me. "You're not bothered that I changed your route." "You improved it, why would I be bothered?" She looked back at her notebook. She made a small note. I did not ask what the note said. By day 7, I had come to understand something about Velsil Velsoren. She was one of the most methodical people I had ever worked alongside, and I have worked alongside a great many people over 19 years, including 3 bilateral inspectors, 2 consulate administrative officers, and a corridor authority facility assessor, who spent 4 days in this building, and found nothing wrong with it that I had not already identified and either logged or repaired. Velsil's specific quality of attention was different from all of them. They were looking for problems. She was building a model of the system. Every question she asked, every reading she logged, every note she made in the gray notebook, they were adding to a complete picture of how the building functioned, not just a list of what was wrong with it. On day 8, she told me the grain paste packets in the supply cabinet were stored 3 degrees above optimal temperature. The supply terminal cooling calibration is running a 2-degree deficit, she said. I ran 3 readings over 2 days to confirm. Combined with the ambient temperature variance in the cleaning bay during the morning cold season drop, it's producing a consistent 3-degree exceedance over the packet's optimal storage range. I looked at the supply terminal. I've never noticed a temperature issue. The packets are still within safe range. But optimal is 2 degrees lower. The calibration drift takes approximately 30 days to produce a measurable effect on packet integrity. You may not have caught it yet because the drift is gradual. I checked the calibration log. She was right. The drift had begun 6 weeks prior, which was at the outer edge of what my quarterly calibration check would catch. I recalibrated the terminal before the end of the day. She watched me do it. When I closed the terminal panel, she made a note in the notebook. I said, "What are you writing?" She said that you recalibrated it immediately. What else would I do? She thought for a moment. At the consulate, she said carefully, when someone identifies a problem, there is usually a meeting about the problem. Then a meeting to assign the problem to someone. Then a follow-up to confirm the assignment was received. Then a report on the status of the problem. The problem itself is sometimes addressed before the third follow-up. I looked at her. That seems inefficient. Yes, she said. The secondary administrative branch coordinator arrived on day 11. I had expected him earlier, to be honest. The welfare contact filing I had submitted on Thursday, 17 hours before Velsil arrived, had generated an automatic acknowledgement from the compact bilateral welfare registry at 15:02 on the same afternoon, case reference CAS CSA 341-K, and I knew that the secondary administrative branch would have flagged it within the day. The placement instrument on page 27 had been written to catch a janitor who did not read it. The janitor had read it. That was going to require a response from their side. Coordinator Vel Orath Sale arrived at 9:30 with one administrative specialist and a document case. He was tall, in a gray formal transit coat with secondary administrative branch insignia, and he had the specific manner of someone who has been sent to clean up something they were told would be simple. He found me in the supply processing bay replacing a relay conduit coupling. Velsil was logging the East Wing atmospheric readings. I had sent her to the East Wing before 900 because I anticipated this visit, and I did not want her in the room for it. Facility operator Das, he said. Coordinator, I said, and kept working, because the coupling was mid-installation and stopping mid-installation is how you get a seal problem. He waited while I finished. I appreciate a coordinator who can wait. There have been a few over the years. I understand you filed a welfare contact designation with the compact bilateral welfare registry. I did. The placement instrument required it. Page 27, subsection 14, paragraph 3. A pause. You read the full instrument. I always read the full instrument. He placed his document case on the supply processing table. The secondary administrative branch is filing a challenge to the designation under the bilateral secondary placement provisions competency clause. The clause specifies that a welfare contact designation for a placed diplomatic subject must be filed by an operator with bilateral diplomatic facility certification. Your facility holds a standard compact Class II designation, not a bilateral diplomatic certification. I put down the conduit coupling. I picked up the relay terminal handset. I pulled up a document I had located on a Tuesday evening 6 days prior, when I had spent 3 hours in the compact bilateral facility standards archive, because I do not read instruments once. I read them until I understand what they connect to. Compact Bilateral Facility Standards Bulletin Ca BFSB 77, I said. Issued 7 years ago, paragraph 4. A Class II or above compact facility operator designation satisfies the bilateral diplomatic facility certification requirement for welfare contact filings under secondary placement provisions. provided the placement occurs within a facility registered under the Bilateral Diplomatic Support Annex classification. This facility holds classification DSA-3 under the Bilateral Diplomatic Support Annex Registry. The bulletin was issued specifically to close the competency gap because secondary placement instruments were being used to circumvent welfare protections by targeting non-certified facilities. The Welfare Registry acknowledged the bulletin as controlling authority for all subsequent filings. He looked at me. Something shifted in his manner. Not quite surprise, more like the recalibration of an assessment that had been wrong. "You're a maintenance contractor," he said. "I am. I've been one for 19 years. I read the bulletins because the bulletins tell me what I'm responsible for." "The bulletin you're citing is 7 years old, yes. I found it on Tuesday evening. I've been reading the bilateral supplement on Tuesday evening since the 3rd year of my contract because the first time a challenge instrument arrived at this building, 11 years ago, for an entirely different reason. I had not read it and I lost 2 days I could not afford. I made a decision after that. Do you want the full citation, or are you satisfied with the reference number?" He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I'll need to consult with the Secondary Administrative Branch Legal Office." "Of course. The Welfare Registry case reference is CAS CSA 341-K. The bulletin is in the Bilateral Standards Archive. Index Classification BFSB, Year 7 of the current administrative period. I can print you a copy if the archive access is inconvenient." He took the copy. He left. His administrative specialist had not said anything during the entire exchange. The second challenge arrived on day 15. I had anticipated it. When the first challenge fails, and the bulletin made the first challenge a very short conversation with the legal office, the pattern is usually to find a different angle. The secondary placement provision had more than one subsection. This challenge came in writing, through the bilateral relay system, which meant the coordinator had found something he was more confident in. It cited subsection 11 of the secondary placement provision. A welfare contact designation filed by a facility operator could be superseded by a formal administrative review of the placement if the secondary administrative branch could demonstrate that the placed subject's primary welfare needs were not being met at the current facility. Attached to the challenge was a request for a facility welfare assessment by a Velketh Secondary Holdings appointed reviewer, not a compact bilateral welfare assessor, but a commercial entity with secondary administrative branch contracts. I sat with this one for a while. Not because I was uncertain, but because I wanted to make sure I had the right response before I filed it, and the right response required going back to the building log. 19 years of building logs. I printed the East Wing atmospheric readings for the previous 14 days, signed by both myself and Velsil, with timestamps. I printed the supply terminal recalibration record from day 8, timestamped and logged with the notation, drift identified by placed welfare contact subject, corrected immediately. I printed the revised circuit route documentation, noted in the building log on day 7, routing optimization implemented per subject's recommendation, standard circuit now 18 minutes shorter. I printed the grain paste temperature correction log from day 8. And then I pulled the compact bilateral welfare supplement, section 12, subsection 4, paragraph 2. A bilateral welfare assessment of a placed subject may be conducted by an appointed assessor only if the assessor holds a compact bilateral welfare assessor designation of grade WA3 or above. A commercial entity without this designation is not a valid assessor for the purposes of superseding an active welfare contact filing. I checked the Velketh Secondary Holdings reviewer's registration in the Bilateral Welfare Assessor database. They held a commercial facility inspection designation, not a welfare assessor designation. The two are different registries. The reviewer was not grade WA3. The reviewer was not in the welfare assessor registry at all. I filed the counter response at 22:41 that evening, citing subsection 4 paragraph 2, the reviewer's registration status, and 3 corridor authority advisory, opinions on the distinction between commercial facility inspection and bilateral welfare assessment. I also filed a formal notification to the Compact Bilateral Welfare Board that an unregistered entity had been submitted as a welfare assessor in a challenge instrument. Because if someone was doing this here, they were probably doing it somewhere else, and the welfare board should know. The board acknowledged the notification at 6:12 the following morning and flagged it for regulatory review. The secondary administrative branch sent no further challenges. What I want to say about those 30 days is this. The secondary court sent her to punish her. They chose a maintenance facility and a janitor because they wanted her to feel the distance between where she was and where she was supposed to be. They wanted her to spend 30 days being invisible, being small, being surrounded by the kind of work that the diplomatic corridors pretend does not exist. The work that makes the corridors run, that keeps the sensors calibrated and the drainage clear, and the ventilation filters on schedule. The work that 19 years of a person's life can go into without anyone outside the service entrance learning that person's name. What they did not understand is that I do not experience this work as diminishment. I never have. I experience it as the satisfaction of a system that runs correctly, because someone is paying complete attention to it. I have spent 19 years paying complete attention to this building, and the building has rewarded that attention by running correctly, by not surprising me, by being knowable in the way that only a thing you have studied completely can be knowable. I paid the same attention to Velsail. Not because she was a princess, not because I knew what the secondary court had done or planned. Because she was in my building, she was 9 years old, she was alone, she was asking precise questions and writing the answers in a gray notebook, and the grain paste she was eating needed to be stored at the correct temperature. By day 12, she had drafted a maintenance improvement proposal for the East Wing seal replacement schedule. It was 4 pages, in compact standard, with a suggested timeline and a materials list. She presented it to me at the end of the day. I read it. You've got the seal specification wrong in item 3. The East Wing secondary access panel uses a Type D gasket, not Type C. Type C is 1 millimeter thinner. I'll correct it. Otherwise it's solid. The timeline is achievable. I'll implement it after the cold season. She wrote the correction. Then she said quietly, "You're going to use it." It's correct, why wouldn't I use it? She thought for a moment. At the consulate, I submitted a report last year on the bilateral correspondence processing backlog. It identified 3 procedural inefficiencies and suggested specific corrections. The report was reviewed. No action was taken. The backlog has grown by 17% since then. I put the proposal on the workbench. What happened when you submitted the report? The secondary administrative branch coordinator told me that the report showed a commendable attention to detail for someone of my age, and that senior staff would give it the consideration it deserved. I was quiet for a moment, and then it was filed away. Yes. The seal schedule starts after the cold season, I said. I'll put your name on the implementation log as the proposing contributor. She looked at the proposal. She did not say anything. But that evening, sitting at the work table while I logged the day's maintenance, she opened the gray notebook and began writing, and she wrote for almost an hour, longer than I had seen her write before, in the quiet of the cleaning bay with the ambient hum of the building around us. I did not ask what she was writing. The building log was its own work, and her notebook was her own work, and that seemed right. On day 21, she fixed the drainage grate herself. I had not asked her to. I had not suggested it. I came back from the supply processing bay at 14:30 to find her in the diplomatic reception area, flat on her stomach on the floor, with the grate cover off and the cleaning tool from the service kit inserted at the angle I had described on day 3, clearing the accumulated debris from around the off-center pipe flange. I stood in the doorway and watched. She cleared the debris methodically, section by section, the way I had described the first time, not the shortcut way that looks done but leaves residue in the secondary channel. When she was finished, she replaced the grate cover, collected the cleaning tool, and stood up. She had a small amount of debris residue on her transit coat. She noted it without distress, as a fact to address. She looked up and saw me. "It was the 3rd week," she said. "It was. You said the 3rd week of the cold season." "I did." She carried the cleaning tool back to the service kit. I looked up the pipe flange specification in the building records. The correct flange for this installation is a Type 7 alloy with a 3-degree beveled edge. The installation record from the original commissioning shows a Type 6 was used instead. There is a 7-credit difference in material cost between the two. 7 credits? Yes, the Type 6 is cheaper. The original contractor saved 7 credits on the installation and created a problem that has required a 40-minute corrective procedure every cold season for however long this building has been standing. 22 years, I said. She considered that. I have submitted a formal replacement request to the Consulate Facilities Management Office. I cited the building log record of 22 corrective procedures, the original installation specification deviation, and the material cost of a correct replacement versus the accumulated maintenance time cost over 22 years. I looked at her. "You submitted a formal request." "Yes, I used the standard consulate facilities form. I attached the 19 years of drainage correction log entries. The total accumulated corrective maintenance time is documented as approximately 880 minutes. The cost of a Type 7 replacement flange is 14 credits. The cost of 880 minutes of a Class 2 contractor's build time is considerably higher than 14 credits. I said after a moment, "Did you calculate that?" "Yes, I used your billing rate from the public contract registry. The documentation I submitted shows a maintenance cost ratio of approximately 340:1 labor to material for a repair that has never been made." I sat down on the supply processing bench. Not from any weakness, I have sat on this bench 1,000 times, but because I needed a moment to be still with this. "Nobody," I said, "in 22 years has submitted that request." "No," she said, "because it was not anyone's responsibility." She put the cleaning tool in the correct slot of the service kit. She looked at me. "But it's your building," she said. The reply from the Consulate Facilities Management Office came on day 26. The replacement flange had been approved. Installation was scheduled for the following maintenance cycle. The approval cited the documentation submitted by the placed welfare contact subject and the facility operator's 19-year maintenance record. Velsale read the approval twice. She added a note to the gray notebook. Then she closed the notebook and sat at the work table for a moment in the particular quiet of someone who has seen something work correctly for the first time and is deciding what to do with that information. I made grain paste for both of us. I had been doing this since day 3. It had become the end-of-workday habit, the punctuation of the circuit completed and the log updated, and the building as settled as a building can be. She wrapped both hands around the cup the way she always did, the warmth being a practical asset before it was anything else. She said, "My mother does not know I'm here." I did not say anything. I had known since day 2 that the primary house did not place her. The secondary administrative branch's authority over the placement, clear on page 1 of the instrument, was not something a primary line child's mother would have sanctioned. But it was not my place to raise it, and she had not raised it, and I had simply done what needed to be done. She will know, I said after a moment. Because it was true. The welfare contact designation and the two challenge counter filings were all in the bilateral welfare registry, attached to Velsil's primary line welfare record, which was accessible to the primary house under standard bilateral registry protocols. Yes, she said, she will know. We sat with the grain paste in the quiet of the cleaning bay. She said, I embarrassed the secondary administrative branch at a bilateral correspondence review. I raised 3 procedural errors in front of the corridor authority liaison. The coordinator, she paused. The coordinator arranged the placement. He told my mother it was an educational opportunity. And your mother accepted that. My mother trusts the secondary administrative branch to manage internal disciplinary matters. A pause. She did not know what the placement instrument contained. I thought about the 7-credit pipe flange, about 19 years of cold season drainage corrections, about the things that go on for a very long time because nobody with the authority to stop them has the daily proximity to care. I said, the bilateral welfare registry will flag the challenge instruments to the primary house welfare liaison within the next week. The timeline is in Section 6 of the supplement, paragraph 4. It's automatic. She looked at me. You know that. I read the supplement on Tuesday evenings. She was quiet for a moment. Then, you read the supplement on Tuesday evenings because of a challenge instrument 11 years ago that you were not prepared for. Yes. And you have read it every Tuesday since. Most Tuesdays, I miss occasionally. She opened the gray notebook, she wrote something, then she closed it again. I would like to learn the supplement, she said. The full supplement, not only the parts relevant to the placement instrument. I can bring it in tomorrow. I would like to start with the sections that cover how challenge instruments can be filed, she said, and the sections that cover how they can be countered, in that order. I looked at her. She was 9 years old, ash-silver skin, pale amber double-iris eyes, gray notebook closed on the work table beside her empty cup, sitting in a cleaning bay on a mid-corridor moon, because someone with more political authority than moral authority had decided she needed to be diminished. All right, I said. We spent the next 4 evenings on the supplement. Not all of it. The compact bilateral welfare supplement is 412 pages, and 4 evenings is not 400 pages, but the sections she had identified, the challenge instrument provisions, the counterfiling protocols, the timeline requirements, the assessor registration standards. She read with the same precision she brought to the atmospheric sensor logs. She did not read quickly. She read carefully, and when she found something she did not understand, she asked a question, and when she found something that seemed inconsistent with another section she had already read, she flagged it in the gray notebook with a small notation system she had developed on her own, a symbol for contradictions, a symbol for provisions that referenced other provisions, a symbol for things she wanted to follow up. On the second evening, she found an inconsistency I had not found in 11 years of Tuesday reading. Section 12, subsection 7, she said, and Section 4, subsection 3, paragraph 2, they define active welfare contact differently. Section 12 uses a 14-day proximity requirement. Section 4 uses a 7-day requirement. If a challenge instrument cites Section 12, and your filing is between 7 and 14 days old, you have a conflict in the controlling definition. I read both passages. She was right. The Corridor Authority Advisory Opinion from 8 years ago resolves it in favor of Section 4. The shorter window applies. Which means Section 12's 14-day requirement is functionally void in conflict situations. Yes, but the secondary administrative branch could cite Section 12 to a facility operator who had not read the advisory opinion. They could and probably have. She made a notation. The advisory opinion should be in the standard supplement guidance. It isn't. No. It's in the Corridor Authority Advisory Archive, which requires a separate registration to access. Most facility operators don't register. You registered. After the challenge instrument 11 years ago, I registered for everything relevant I could find. She looked at the supplement. Then she said, I would like to submit a comment to the Bilateral Welfare Board requesting that the advisory opinion be incorporated into the standard supplement guidance. You can do that. The comment form is in the board's public registry. Will they respond? Probably not quickly. These things move slowly. But a comment on record is better than no comment on record. Yes, I said, it is. She submitted the comment the following morning, before the 600 circuit. I know because she asked me to show her how to access the public registry filing interface on the building relay terminal, and she composed the comment herself, in careful compact standard, and filed it at 5:53. I logged the ventilation filter in the North Corridor. I logged the comment submission in the building log as an ancillary welfare contact activity, because it was within my standing to do so, and because the log should be complete. She looked at me when I did that. You logged my comment submission. It's part of the record of your welfare contact period. The log should be complete. She thought about this. If the secondary administrative branch filed another challenge, the log entry would document my Bilateral Welfare Board engagement during the placement period. Yes, which would be relevant to the question of whether the placement term is being used for the stated purpose of operational education. Yes. She looked at the building log for a moment. Then she made a notation in the gray notebook. I did not ask what it said. On the fourth evening of supplement study, she asked me something I had not expected. Did you know what the placement was, she said, when you read the instrument the first time? Did you understand what they had done? I thought about how to answer that honestly. I understood that the instrument was structured to catch an operator who did not read it. I understood that a primary line child being placed with a building maintenance contractor for disciplinary purposes was not an educational arrangement in the ordinary sense. I did not know the specific political circumstances. I did not need to. Why not? Because the correct response to a placement instrument is the same regardless of the political circumstances. You read it, you file what it requires, you do the work that is in front of you. The politics of why she was sent were not my business. The welfare contact designation was. She was quiet for a moment. Most people in your position would have signed for the placement and not read the instrument. Most people in my position have never had a challenge instrument arrive that they were not prepared for. I have once, and I decided after that to be prepared. One experience 11 years ago changed how you read every document since. Yes. She made a notation. That seems like an efficient response to a single point of failure. It is. The cost of reading the supplement on Tuesday evenings is approximately 2 hours per week. The cost of being unprepared for a challenge instrument is much higher. She closed the notebook. She held her grain paste cup in both hands. At the consulate, she said, there are people whose entire function is to read documents. They have offices and staff and archive access. They have been doing it for years. They missed page 27 of a 32-page instrument. They were probably not looking for something designed to catch them. No, she said, they were not. The primary house sent a vessel on day 28. I knew it was coming. The welfare registry timeline said within the week from day 22, and it was day 28, which was within the week. I had not told Velsil, not because I was keeping it from her, but because I did not know what form it would take, and I do not tell people about things I cannot yet describe with accuracy. The vessel arrived at the service entrance, not the main entrance, the service entrance. I found out later that the vessel's navigation system had been given the building address, and the system had routed to the registered compact facility operator's access point, which is the service entrance. I have no complaints about this. The service entrance is where the building's actual business happens. She came alone. The first seat of the Velsarin primary house was tall, deep ash silver, with silver-white hair and pale amber double-iris eyes that were the same color as Velsail's. The same color exactly, the way a person's eyes are the same color as the eyes of the person who gave them to her. She was wearing a plain gray traveling coat, no insignia, no escort visible, and she was moving at the speed of someone who had read something and then gotten onto a vessel. I met her at the service entrance. She said, "You are facility operator Das." "I am." She looked at me with the specific look of someone who has read a welfare registry file and is matching the human in front of her to what the file described. "My daughter is here." "She is. She's in the East Wing running the afternoon atmospheric sensor readings. She'll be back at the cleaning bay in about 20 minutes if the circuit is running on the revised schedule, which it usually is." A pause, the revised schedule. She optimized the maintenance circuit on day 7, cut 18 minutes off the standard run. The first seat looked at me for a moment, then she said, "May I see the building log?" I brought her to the cleaning bay. I put the building log on the work table, 19 years of logs, but specifically the last 28 days, which I had already set apart in the display because I had anticipated this request. She read it standing up, which is how I know she was genuinely reading it and not performing the act of reading it. She stood at the work table for 11 minutes and read 28 days of entries. When she finished, she looked up. "She fixed the drainage great," she said. On day 21, the cold season third week blockage, it's a recurring issue with the original pipe flange installation. She submitted a replacement request to Consulate Facilities Management on the same day, with a cost ratio analysis that I believe will be more effective in getting the repair actually done than anything I've put in front of them in 19 years. "The welfare contact designation," she said. "You filed it before she arrived." I read the placement instrument Thursday morning. The filing window required a designation within 72 hours of arrival. I filed Thursday afternoon. "You read the placement instrument?" "All 32 pages." She was quiet for a moment, including page 27. "Including page 27. She set the building log down carefully. She looked at me with an expression I could not fully read. It had multiple layers. The way expressions have multiple layers when someone is experiencing more than one thing at once. "The secondary administrative branch told me the placement was an educational opportunity," she said. "They told me she would benefit from understanding how facility operations function at the bilateral support level." "She has," I said. "She understands the East Wing atmospheric sensor system, the supply terminal calibration protocols, and approximately 11 years of bilateral welfare supplement provisions. She also understands the difference between a Type D gasket and a Type C gasket, which may not be immediately relevant to primary house diplomatic functions, but is a useful thing to know." The first seat looked at me for a long moment. "What they sent her to," she said quietly, "was not an educational opportunity. No. They chose this building because," she stopped. "Because they chose someone they thought would not read the instrument," I said. "They were incorrect." She sat down at the work table. She had the manner of someone who has been moving fast for 2 days and has just found the place where they can be still. "The challenge instruments," she said, "both of them. The first used the bilateral diplomatic certification competency clause. The Compact Bilateral Facility Standards Bulletin from 7 years ago resolves it. Standard Class 2 designation satisfies the requirement for DSA 3 classified facilities, which this one is." I cited the bulletin, The coordinator consulted the legal office. The challenge was withdrawn. The second used the bilateral welfare assessment supersession provision and submitted an unregistered commercial reviewer. The reviewer was not in the welfare assessor registry at grade WA3 or above. The counter-response cited subsection 4 paragraph 2. I also notified the bilateral welfare board of the unregistered assessor submission. They've opened a regulatory review. She was quiet. The regulatory review, she said. The pattern of using commercial inspection entities in place of registered welfare assessors in challenge instruments is worth the board knowing about. If it's happening here, it's happening elsewhere. She looked at the work table. A compact facility maintenance contractor, she said, with something in her voice I could not quite categorize, filed a regulatory notification to the Bilateral Welfare Board about a secondary administrative branch legal practice. I am also a registered Class II facility operator and an active welfare contact designee. The notification was within my standing. I know it was. She looked up. Where is she? Velcel came through the cleaning bay door at 16:14, 3 minutes ahead of the revised schedule, which told me she had moved the East Wing readings to a slightly faster pace, probably in anticipation of the afternoon log compilation that she had taken over on day 9. She stopped in the doorway. She looked at her mother looked at her. I had expected something, tears or words, or some large visible emotion of the kind that diplomatic situations produce when suppressed things surface. What happened instead was quieter than that. Velcel crossed the cleaning bay floor in about 4 steps, and her mother put both arms around her, and that was all. No fleet, no ceremony. Just a mother and a daughter in a cleaning bay on a mid-corridor moon, the ambient hum of the building around them, the gray notebook tucked under Velcel's arm. After a moment, Velcel looked up. He reads the supplement on Tuesday evenings, she said, because of a challenge instrument 11 years ago that he wasn't prepared for. He has not been unprepared for one since. Her mother over her head looked at me. I said the East Wing readings were at baseline today. The atmospheric sensor is holding steady. The supply terminal calibration is within spec. The first seat of the Velsoren primary house laughed. It was a brief sound, the sound of something unexpected arriving in a place where unexpected things had been arriving all afternoon. Is it always like this? She asked. The building runs on a circuit, I said. The circuit runs correctly if you pay attention to it. That's all it is. She stayed 3 more days, which brought the placement to its full 30-day term. Not because she had to. The first seat had the authority to end the placement the moment she arrived, but because Velcel asked to stay through the term. She said she had not finished reviewing the bilateral supplement sections on challenge instrument responses. She also said the drainage grate replacement was scheduled for installation on day 31, and she wanted to see it done. On day 30, the replacement flange arrived from Consulate Facilities Management. It arrived at the service entrance, addressed to placed welfare contact subject Velson in care of facility operator K. Das. I brought it to the diplomatic reception area, Velcel beside me, and we replaced the flange together. It took 41 minutes. The pipe now runs level. It will not back up next cold season. When we were done, she put the old flange, the off-center Type 6 that had caused 22 years of cold season maintenance, in the cloth bag. For the record, she said, you're keeping a defective pipe flange. I'm keeping evidence of what happens when someone saves 7 credits on an installation and considers the matter closed. She put the cloth bag over her shoulder. It will be useful later. I did not doubt that it would. Her mother's vessel was at the service entrance. The first seat was already there, waiting. She had been doing that these 3 days, existing at a careful distance that was close enough and not closer, the way someone stands when they understand that the space belongs to someone else and they are guests in it. Velsil stopped at the service entrance threshold. She turned around. She reached into the cloth bag, not the bag with the pipe flange, a different pocket, and took out something and put it on the cleaning bay work table. A pale gray stone, smooth, with a white mineral seam running through it from one edge to the other, unbroken. Velsathos, she said, Old Velsorin. It means the place or the person that is exactly what it says it is, at every scale of task. She looked at the stone. I found it in the service corridor on day 4, near the North Wall Junction. I have been carrying it since then. I looked at the stone on the work table. My building, I said. Your building, she said. She went through the service entrance. The vessel lifted from the pad. The building's ambient hum continued, the way it always does, the east wing atmospheric sensors running at baseline, the supply terminal calibrated and correct, the new drainage flange level in the diplomatic reception floor, the stone on the work table catching the corridor light. I logged the flange installation. I logged the end of the placement term. I logged the stone, because the building log is a complete record and the stone is now part of the building. Then I started the evening circuit. The building runs correctly when you pay complete attention to it. That is all it has ever been.